I never thought my life would take such a drastic turn, but there I was, sitting in my dimly lit living room, nursing a scotch on the rocks while the shadows danced around me. The room was filled with remnants of a life that once felt safe and secure: family photos on the mantel, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, and the faint scent of my wife's perfume lingering in the air. Her name was Laura, a woman who had been my partner, my confidant, and the mother of our two beautiful children. We had built a life together, or so I thought. We lived in a suburban neighborhood, a place where everyone knew each other and the community was tightly knit. Laura was the perfect wife in many ways, always charming and sociable, making friends easily. She was the heart of our home, and I had always admired her ability to connect with others. I had a good job as a marketing manager at a tech company, which provided us with a comfortable lifestyle. But as it turned out, appearances can be deceiving. The signs were subtle at first. Laura started coming home late from her book club meetings, which always seemed to stretch longer than necessary. She began to take more interest in her appearance, often spending hours getting ready for outings that I couldn't recall inviting her to. I brushed off my suspicions. After all, I had trust in our marriage. However, that trust began to erode when I stumbled upon a series of text messages on her phone one fateful evening. I had come home early from work, eager to surprise Laura with dinner. She was out running errands, or so I thought. As I waited, I noticed her phone vibrating on the kitchen counter. Out of curiosity, I picked it up, intending to silence it. What I found instead shattered my world. Texts filled with flirty banter and intimate plans between Laura and none other than my bank manager, Richard, whom I had considered a friend. The messages were unmistakable. They discussed secret meetings, weekend getaways, and even an inside joke that made my stomach churn. My heart raced as I read through the exchanges, realization hitting me like a freight train. The man I had trusted with my finances was also stealing my wife's heart, and perhaps much more. When Laura finally returned home, I confronted her. I pulled no punches, showing her the incriminating messages and demanding an explanation. Her face turned pale and she stammered, trying to justify her betrayal. But there was no justification. My world was crumbling around me, and anger surged through my veins. I could feel my life spiraling out of control, and suddenly, a dark thought took root in my mind, a plan for revenge that would take the fight to the very heart of her betrayal. I could not just sit back and allow her to ruin our lives together. If she wanted to play games, I would ensure she faced the consequences. As I sat there sipping my scotch, I began to plot my course of action. I would withdraw all of our money from the joint accounts, leave her with nothing but the bare essentials, and watch her financial empire crumble. She had taken my trust and shattered it, and now it was time for her to feel the impact of her choices. Would I feel guilt or remorse later? I didn't know. All I felt in that moment was a burning desire for retribution, and I was determined to see my plan unfold. The next few days were a blur of emotions. I felt like I was living in a fog, going through the motions of daily life while my mind raced with thoughts of betrayal and revenge. Laura acted as if nothing was wrong, continuing her usual routine. It made my blood boil to see her walk around the house with that same charming smile, completely oblivious, or perhaps indifferent, to the devastation she had caused. I had to remind myself constantly that I was not the one at fault. I was the victim here. I spent sleepless nights planning. The more I thought about it, the more I knew that simply withdrawing the money wouldn't be enough. I wanted to leave Laura with a message, a demonstration of the consequences of her actions. I had always been the level-headed one in our relationship, the one who favored reason over impulse, but now I found myself consumed by a burning sense of injustice. I decided that I needed to gather more evidence before executing my plan. I began to track Laura's movements, discreetly following her when she left the house. It felt like a scene from a cheap thriller, and I half expected to see myself on some reality TV show, but nothing could prepare me for what I discovered. One Friday evening, I followed her to a restaurant on the outskirts of town. It was dimly lit and upscale, the kind of place we used to go for special occasions. I parked a block away and waited for her to enter. I watched the door, my heart racing with each passing moment, feeling like a fool for what I was doing yet unable to stop myself. After about 20 minutes, a familiar figure walked in, a tall man with a relaxed posture and a confident swagger. Richard, my bank manager, my friend. I felt my stomach drop as I realized that the affair was not just a fleeting moment of weakness, it was a full-blown relationship. The two of them sat in a secluded corner booth, sharing laughter and drinks, their chemistry palpable. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the warmth of anger surging through me. I watched them exchange smiles, leaning in close to whisper secrets that would never involve me. It was a gut-wrenching scene, and I wanted to confront them right then and there, to reveal my presence and expose the truth, but I held back. I wanted my revenge to be calculated, not impulsive. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures, capturing the moment for posterity. I knew I would need evidence not just for myself, but also to ensure Laura would understand the depth of her betrayal when the time came. I watched them for an hour, my heart filled with a mix of sorrow and rage, until they finally stood up to leave. They walked out together, arms brushing against each other, and I felt like I was suffocating. Once I returned home, I was consumed by a sense of clarity. A plan began to form in my mind, one that would ensure Laura understood the true meaning of loss. I would not only drain our joint accounts, but also make sure she felt the financial strain, the embarrassment of losing everything she had come to depend on. I took a deep breath. The stakes were high, but it was time to put the wheels in motion. I gathered my financial documents and organized everything I would need for a clean withdrawal. My mind was clear, my resolve unwavering. The next day, I would confront the bank manager and I would put my plan into action. I knew I had to navigate this carefully. I wanted to ensure that the fallout would be as devastating as possible. I wasn't just punishing Laura for her infidelity. I was also making a statement to Richard, a warning that no one crosses me without consequence. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I was no longer the victim. I was taking back control of my life. The morning dawned with a heavy sense of purpose. I woke up early, the sunlight streaming through the curtains illuminating the turmoil I felt. Today was the day I would set my plan into motion. My heart raced at the thought of confronting both Laura and Richard. I had been pushed to the edge, and now it was time to reclaim my dignity and self-respect. I started my day by reviewing my financial situation. I had always maintained meticulous records, and I knew exactly how much was in our joint accounts. It was a substantial amount, enough to ensure that Laura would feel the blow when it disappeared. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction imagining the look on her face when she realized the extent of her financial ruin. After a quick breakfast, I dressed in my best suit, an outfit that screamed confidence. I wanted to appear composed and rational, even though my emotions were anything but. The facade was crucial. I needed to maintain an air of normalcy while I executed my plan. I drove to the bank, my palms sweaty on the steering wheel. I had scheduled a meeting with Richard earlier in the week for an unrelated matter, a perfect cover for what was about to unfold. As I parked in the bank's lot, I took a moment to gather my thoughts. I needed to remain calm and collected. I couldn't let my anger get the best of me. Stepping into the bank, I was immediately greeted by the familiar atmosphere of the place. The scent of fresh coffee, the sound of keys clicking on a computer, and the low murmur of conversations. I made my way to Richard's office, feeling the adrenaline pumping through my veins. When I reached his door, I knocked, waiting for his response. "Come in," he called out, and I opened the door to find him behind his desk, a wide grin on his face. "Hey, buddy," he exclaimed, standing up to shake my hand. "Good to see you. What's on your mind?" I forced a smile, but inside I felt like a volcano about to erupt. "Thanks for meeting with me, Richard. I wanted to discuss our finances." "Of course," he replied, gesturing for me to take a seat. "I'm glad you came in. Let's take a look at what you've got." As he shuffled through some papers, I took a moment to assess him. He looked every bit the part of the successful banker, sharp suit, neatly combed hair, and an air of confidence that I had once admired. But now, all I felt was contempt for the man who had violated my trust. "I've been doing some thinking," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. And I've decided that I want to withdraw all my funds from our joint account. I believe it's best for me to manage my finances independently from now on. Richard's smile faltered for a brief moment, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. All of it. Are you sure? That's quite a decision. I nodded, feeling the weight of my resolve solidifying. Yes, I'm sure. I've thought it through. I want to close the account and transfer everything to my personal account. Richard leaned back in his chair, a slight frown etched on his brow. All right, I can facilitate that for you, but I'd like to talk about your financial strategy moving forward. It's always good to keep some buffer in a joint account, you know. Let's not beat around the bush, I replied, cutting him off. Just process the withdrawal. I want it done today. He hesitated for a moment, clearly grappling with the sudden shift in our conversation, but he quickly composed himself and began the paperwork. I could see the gears turning in his mind, but I was in no mood for pleasantries or small talk. As the minutes dragged on, I felt a rush of excitement mixed with vengeance. I was dismantling the life Laura had carefully built on deceit. I imagined her panic when she discovered that all her access to our shared wealth was suddenly cut off. It was intoxicating. Once the forms were signed and the withdrawal processed, I left the bank with a sense of triumph. I felt like I had taken the first step in reclaiming my life, but my plan didn't end there. I needed to ensure that Richard, too, understood the ramifications of his actions. I had evidence of his betrayal, and I would use it to my advantage. On my way back home, I couldn't shake the anticipation building within me. I envisioned the confrontation with Laura, the moment she would realize the consequences of her infidelity. I would confront her with the truth, not only about her affair but also about the financial chaos she would soon face. She had crossed a line, and now it was time for her to see exactly what that meant. As I parked the car and walked into the house, my heart raced with a mix of anxiety and exhilaration. I was ready to face Laura and deliver the news that would change everything. With every step, I felt a surge of power. My life was about to take a significant turn, and I was no longer the victim. I was the architect of my own revenge. The atmosphere in the house was eerily calm as I walked in. It was a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I found Laura in the kitchen preparing dinner, completely oblivious to the havoc that was about to unfold. She hummed a tune as she chopped vegetables, her hair tied back in a loose bun, looking every bit the domestic goddess. But beneath that facade of normalcy, I knew the truth. "Hey, honey," she called out cheerfully, glancing over her shoulder. "You're home early. How was your meeting?" I paused, weighing my words carefully. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head, and each time I felt the fire of betrayal burning stronger. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but firm. The cheerfulness in her expression faded as she turned to fully face me. "Talk? About what?" I watched as confusion flickered across her face, and for a moment I relished the feeling of having the upper hand. "About our finances and your little extracurricular activities." The color drained from her face and she set the knife down slowly. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, her voice suddenly cautious. "Let's not pretend, Laura. I know everything," I said, my voice low and controlled. "I know about you and Richard." Her eyes widened and I could see the gears in her mind turning as she tried to process the words. "What are you talking about, Richard? I don't understand." I took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline surge through me. "I followed you, Laura. I saw you at the restaurant with him. The texts, the late nights. It all adds up. You've been having an affair." The silence that followed was deafening. Laura's mouth opened and closed as if she were trying to find the right words but failing miserably. I could see panic creeping into her expression, and it felt like a sweet victory. "Please, let's just talk about this," she implored, her voice trembling. "I can explain." "Explain what? How you betrayed me, how you made a fool out of me." "There's nothing to explain," I shot back, feeling a sense of righteous anger course through me. "I've already made some decisions of my own." "What do you mean?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. The realization seemed to dawn on her, and I could feel her tension mounting. "I went to the bank today and withdrew all the money from our joint account. You have nothing now, Laura. You'll have to figure out how to manage on your own." Her face turned pale as she took a step back, her body language betraying the panic that was setting in. You can't be serious. You just can't do that. I just did. You wanted to play games and now it's time for you to face the consequences. You've left me no choice. She shook her head, almost pleading. You're overreacting. This is just a bump in the road. We can work through it together. I scoffed at her efforts. Together, after what you've done, there's no coming back from this. You've destroyed everything we built and now it's my turn to dismantle what you hold dear. I watched as she struggled for words, the shock of my actions settling in. What about the kids? She finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I glanced away, feeling a moment of guilt wash over me. The children were innocent in this mess, and I had no intention of dragging them through it. I'll figure out a way to ensure they're taken care of, but you need to understand that your actions have real consequences. Laura's expression shifted from anger to despair. You're being cruel, and this isn't who you are. You're better than this. I felt a pang of regret for a fleeting moment, but I quickly pushed it aside. You made your choice when you decided to cheat on me, Laura. Don't try to turn this back on me. As the reality of my actions sank in, I could see her demeanor shift. The confident woman I once knew seemed to crumble before my eyes, replaced by a person filled with desperation. I'll get the money back. I can talk to Richard. He can help us. I shook my head. This isn't about getting money back. It's about making you understand that your choices have consequences. You've relied on Richard for far too long. Now you'll have to rely on yourself. I could see her realization wash over her, a mix of fear, anger, and despair. You're ruining everything. No, you did that. You ruined everything when you chose to betray our marriage. The exchange felt like it stretched for an eternity, but it was liberating to finally confront her. I was no longer the passive partner. I was the one taking charge, reclaiming the power that had been stripped away from me. As I turned to leave the kitchen, I felt a strange sense of accomplishment mixed with sorrow. I had executed my plan, but the emotional fallout was still heavy. I had sought revenge, but I also knew that this was just the beginning. Laura would have to navigate the fallout of her decisions, and I would watch her struggle, knowing I had played my part. Back in the living room, I sat in silence, reflecting on what had transpired. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. Revenge was a powerful motivator, but I also realized that it wouldn't fill the void left by her betrayal. I had taken control, but it came at a steep price. Would the fallout truly be worth it? I was about to find out. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotional turmoil. The initial thrill of executing my revenge began to fade, replaced by a gnawing sense of unease. I had watched Laura's world unravel, and while part of me felt vindicated, another part grappled with the reality of what I had done. The house felt different, even colder. The laughter of our children was replaced by silence, and the warmth of family dinners was now an echo of the past. Laura didn't take the news of our financial situation well. She attempted to reach out to me multiple times, but I ignored her calls and messages. I had made it clear I was no longer interested in discussing our lives together. I didn't want to hear her excuses or apologies. Trust once shattered could never be rebuilt, and I was determined to stay true to my resolve. One evening, as I was sorting through paperwork in my office, Laura approached me. She stood in the doorway, her eyes puffy and red from crying. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked up, seeing her vulnerable state, and felt a pang of guilt. But I quickly pushed it aside. "What more is there to say, Laura? You've made your choices. I just want to understand why you would do this," she said, her voice trembling. "You didn't have to hurt me like this." "I didn't hurt you, you hurt yourself," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. "You made a choice to betray our marriage. I just made a choice to protect myself." She took a step closer, desperation etched across her face. "I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Just tell me how I can talk to Richard." "Enough," I snapped, cutting her off. "Your affair with him is the reason we're in this mess. There's no fixing this. You need to face the consequences of your actions." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she fell silent, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "I didn't think it would come to this," she murmured. "I thought we could work things out. I thought you would understand." "Understand what, Laura? That you could betray me and then just get away with it? No, I won't let you manipulate me into feeling sorry for you or backing down." I felt the anger rising within me again. I was done playing games, and I was not going to allow her to twist the narrative. The days grew heavier as the reality of our financial situation set in. Laura struggled to manage the household expenses. I watched as she attempted to juggle bills and expenses, her anxiety palpable. There were subtle changes in her demeanor, less confidence, more worry. It was a stark contrast to the woman who had flaunted her independence just a few weeks earlier. I overheard her on the phone trying to plead with Richard, but he was no longer interested in being her confidant. Rumors about their affair swirled within the community, and I knew it wasn't long before the truth would come out. The shame would be unbearable for her, and I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction knowing I had set this all in motion. I thought back to the times when we were happy, when our family felt whole. Those memories were now tainted, overshadowed by betrayal. I had once believed Laura was my partner, but now she felt like a stranger. I faced my own emotional battles, too. I had lost the love I once knew, and the emptiness settled within me, growing like a dark cloud. One night after the kids had gone to bed, I found myself sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the television but not really watching. Laura sat across from me, her eyes swollen from crying. "I can't keep living like this," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "I'm scared and I don't know what to do." For the first time, I saw the weight of her choices on her shoulders. "You wanted to be independent, Laura. You wanted to have your fun," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Now you need to deal with the consequences. This is not just about you anymore. Our children are affected by this." She dropped her gaze, the defeat evident in her posture. "I never wanted this. I thought I could handle both worlds, but I was wrong." I felt a flicker of sympathy, but I quickly extinguished it. "It's too late for that. You wanted to play, and now you're left with the mess you created." Days turned into weeks, and the reality of our situation became even more pronounced. Laura struggled to keep her head above water financially. I noticed her going to our friends, asking for help and support, and I could see the shame etched on her face. They all knew about the affair, and I knew the whispers would continue. As the weight of the situation pressed on her, Laura finally came to me one evening, her voice shaking as she spoke. "I need your help. I can't do this alone anymore. Please, let's at least talk about a plan for the kids." I sighed, feeling the bitterness rise again. "You should have thought about that before you decided to betray me. Why should I help you now?" "Because we're still parents," she insisted, frustration spilling over. "The kids need us to be united even if our marriage is over." I contemplated her words. The truth was, I didn't want to drag the kids into our mess. If there was any chance of co-parenting effectively, it had to start now. They were innocent in all of this, and I had to consider their needs. "Fine," I said eventually, my voice firm. "But this doesn't mean I'm forgiving you. It means we have to figure out how to manage this mess together for their sake." As we began to navigate our way through the financial turmoil and co-parenting, I felt a strange sense of solidarity with her. Perhaps revenge had its limits. While I had taken pleasure in witnessing her struggle, I could see the human side of her again. The facade of hatred began to crack, but deep down, I knew that I would never be able to fully forgive her, and maybe I didn't want to. The emotional scars would take time to heal, and while revenge had felt good in the moment, the aftermath was messy and complicated. Our relationship had changed forever, and as hard as I tried to remain closed off, I realized that both of us would have to move forward, even if that meant doing so as two very different people. As the weeks turned into months, Laura and I navigated this new arrangement with an uneasy understanding. We were no longer partners in the traditional sense, but we had to cooperate for the sake of our children. The financial strain was palpable, and both of us learned to find new ways of living. I had to watch her struggle, which, underneath the surface of my anger, was a reminder of the choices we had both made. Laura took on a job at a local cafe, working long hours to contribute to the household. It was a humbling experience for her, one that forced her to confront the reality of her situation. I could see the toll it was taking on her, the exhaustion evident in her eyes as she juggled work and parenting. It was tough for our kids, too. They noticed the change in their mother's demeanor and the shift in our family dynamic. Despite the tension, we managed to keep our communication focused on the children. We began attending their school events together again, sitting side by side, albeit with an underlying tension that never fully disappeared. At times, I caught glimpses of the woman I had once loved, the caring mother who would play with our kids and laugh at silly jokes. But those moments were always intertwined with memories of betrayal, and I struggled to reconcile the two. One afternoon, as we were preparing for our son's birthday party, we found ourselves in the kitchen, working together to get everything ready. Laura looked over at me, her expression serious. "You know, I've been thinking, maybe I can change. I want to be a better person, a better mother." I paused, considering her words. Part of me wanted to believe her, to see this as an opportunity for redemption, but another part of me was still wary. Change takes time, Laura. It's not something you can just say and then do. Trust isn't built overnight. "I know that," she replied, a hint of frustration in her voice. "But I mean it. I want to make things right. I understand now how much I've hurt you and the kids." Her sincerity struck a chord in me, and I found myself softening, if only slightly. "It's going to take more than just words. You have to show it through your actions. It's a long road ahead." As the party progressed, I watched Laura interact with our children, and a part of me began to feel hopeful. She seemed genuinely engaged, and the laughter that filled the room felt infectious. For the first time in a long while, I saw a flicker of the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. But as the evening drew to a close, reality set back in. Later that night, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat on the couch, reflecting on everything that had happened. The hurt was still there, the scars of betrayal running deep, but perhaps finding a way to co-parent effectively was the first step toward healing. It was a delicate balance. I had made my choice to withdraw from the financial entanglements, and now Laura had to face the consequences of her actions alone. Yet, in a way, that choice had forced us both to grow. I had discovered strength I didn't know I possessed, while Laura was learning humility and resilience. As time went on, our interactions began to shift. We started to share more than just the burden of parenting. We found common ground in our children's interests and their milestones, and with each interaction, there was a gradual thawing of the ice between us. While the romantic love was extinguished, it felt as though we were slowly rebuilding a different kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect and understanding. As the seasons changed, I began to notice a change within myself as well. I had initially sought revenge to reclaim my power, but I realized that true power lay in forgiveness, not just for Laura but for myself. Holding on to anger was exhausting, and while I would never forget the betrayal, I could choose to move forward. One evening, Laura and I sat down together, and I broached the subject that had been weighing on my mind. "I think it's time we start focusing on our future rather than just our past. We can't keep dwelling on what happened. It's too heavy." She looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. "You mean it?" "Yeah, I do. We can't change the past, but we can work on being better for our kids and for ourselves. It won't be easy, but it's worth a shot." A small smile broke across her face, and I felt a sense of relief. Maybe, just maybe, we were beginning to redefine our relationship. We were still going to be co-parents, but we could also be allies in a shared journey of growth. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, and I knew I would still have to guard my heart. But for the first time since Laura's betrayal, I felt a glimmer of hope. We had both learned hard lessons about trust and the fragility of love, but perhaps we could emerge stronger on the other side. In the end, my act of revenge had transformed into something unexpected. It had forced us both to confront our shortcomings and to choose growth over resentment. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was a start, one that allowed us to move forward with a sense of purpose and determination for our family. As I settled into bed that night, I felt a sense of peace. Life was far from perfect, but it was mine to shape, and I was finally ready to embrace whatever came next. The past would always be a part of me, but the future was now within my grasp. And for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face it head on.